afternoon, everybody. Why should you care about ocean microplastics? 170 trillion plastic particles. That's how many plastic particles were afloat in our oceans in 2019, according to Erickson, Kalga et al. In a study published in 2023. Perhaps more alarmingly, that was 13 times more than the amount that were estimated to be there in 2004. Hence the big spike. If we try to extrapolate that for now, and I'm kind, and I take the 5 years of the lowest growth since 2004 for my extrapolation, I apply it up there, we could be talking like maybe 300 trillion plastic particles today, a mass of about 3 million metric tons. And if you put that into a volume, because I love to contextualize by comparison, that's approximately 1,200 Olympic swimming pools full of microplastic. Good afternoon, my name is Jess Middlemiss, and I am the Chief Technology Officer of Matter. Matter is an engineering company based in Bristol, UK, and our vision is to live in a world without microplastic pollution. But I'm not just the CTO of Matter. I know that we also have some other parents in the room. Austin, you have a child. I also have 2 children. I'm also a concerned citizen. I'm a beekeeper, and I'm also a foodie. We talked about that earlier. Maybe there'll be a bit more on that later. So let's dive in, pun intended. Let's look at the science of ocean microplastics and the impact that they are probably having, not just on the environment, but on me, on my kids, and on you. So let's start with the ocean's role in the sequestration of carbon and the generation of oxygen. Approximately 50% of the Earth's oxygen is generated by phytoplankton and bacteria in the ocean that convert CO2 from the atmosphere into oxygen via photosynthesis. That carbon is incorporated into their bodies and the bodies of the organisms that feed on them. When they die, it sinks to the bottom, it creates carbon-rich sediments, that creates rocks, locks the carbon away for millions of years. Microplastic pollution has a negative impact on the photosynthesis of those phytoplankton. It also affects the feeding patterns, growth rate, lifespan, and fertility of the marine organisms that feed on them. We also know that plastics have plenty of chemicals in them that are harmful to human and animal health, and they've also been shown to attract PFAS, so-called forever chemicals, in aquatic environments, which means they're basically creating an even more toxic food placebo for marine life. Of course, when they eat those microplastics, that can transfer through the food chain, and recent studies have shown that in a range of seafood regularly consumed by humans, you will find microplastics. So, as a foodie, not so sure about seafood anymore. Microplastics come from a whole range of different sources, but large contributors are city dust, tyre, wear, and textiles, where through the shedding of synthetic microfibers during manufacture, use, and end of life, it's thought that that contributes approximately 35% of all ocean microplastics. Wastewater treatment can be effective when it's available or when it's functioning properly. Sorry, UK, not doing a great job at that at the moment. Yes, it takes the microplastics out of the water that's being released back into the rivers, but they land in the sludge. And in the UK and in lots of other countries, that sludge is routinely spread on farmland, and those microplastics run straight back into the rivers as soon as it rains, back into the ocean. So, we've established that microplastics are bad for the ocean, they're bad for carbon sequestration, they're bad for oxygen production, but what about for humans? So a quick search on Google Scholar, other search engines are available, that's just the one I chose, can find loads of published medical studies that have found microplastics in brain, blood, breast milk, lungs, placenta, urine, feces in humans. And yeah, I probably fed my children breast milk when they were babies. The presence of microplastics has been linked to a whole host of different ailments and diseases, including cancer, Parkinson's disease, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, inflammatory bowel disease. A recent study published on the 6th of March in the New England Journal of Medicine sampled the carotid artery plaques of patients that were already having surgery and found microplastics, polyethylene microplastic particles, in the plaques of 58% of the people that they sampled. It also found, once they'd done all the proper statistical analysis, that that gave those individuals a nearly five times higher chance of a cardiovascular incident. That brought it home for me because my father-in-law had a stroke 2 weeks ago. Thankfully, he's at home and he's recovering, but I do wonder if microplastics had a part to play in his stroke. So I've established that I don't want to ingest microplastics, and I know that seafood contains them, so maybe I should become a vegan? Unfortunately, vegans aren't immune either. So the sewage sludge that's spread on land, the amount of plastic that you can contain in that is not regulated at the moment. And some studies have indicated that the amount of plastic in there could be as high as 1 plastic shopping bag per metre squared of farmland. It also affects the responsiveness to sucrose for bees and their navigation skills. Now, as a beekeeper, obviously, this is very close to my heart. But if the bees aren't very responsive to sucrose, they don't forage. If they don't forage, the colony collapses, and you can kiss goodbye to your precious pollination for your plant-based foods. So it's not just the oceans, although there are lots of microplastics in there. This is affecting all of us, and it could be very bad. But let's stop the doom spiraling for a minute, and let's talk about how matter is trying to help. So I've already explained our vision to live in a world free from microplastic pollution. The way we're trying to tackle that is through a three-step approach. So the first one is measuring. We've already established that plenty of other people are doing research in this area. There's loads of measurement going on. That's great. And we're starting to better understand the impacts. We're also trying to educate people. Hi, educating. We've developed a microplastic assessment program which we can deploy for organisations to help them accurately measure microplastics in their facilities, to assess how much is generated where, and to figure out whether the sort of existing measures that they've got in place are capable and whether they're doing a good job. Step 2 is to cap the problem. So here we're trying to turn off the tap, and this is where me as a problem solver comes in, I guess. This is the CTO part. We've developed and patented technology that captures microplastics at source. It can be at home, it can be in an industrial setting. We'll continue to innovate, but the technology exists fundamentally. We're just waiting for it to be adopted or trying to find ways to get it adopted. Obviously, there also needs to be innovation to try to reduce the amount that microplastics are shed. So we're absolutely advocating for work into fibres that shed less, into vehicles that have lower wear rates on tyres, and to just sort of generally reduce humankind's reliance on frangible coatings and synthetic materials. Hopefully, our technology will become obsolete. Strange thing to say, standing here, but genuinely, I really hope that that's the case. But even if these solutions were ready now, we're still going to see decades and decades of microplastic generation because of all the materials that are currently still in circulation. We're also lobbying legislators to try to incentivise or mandate filtration to capture microplastics at source. The European Commission have adopted a restriction that means that synthetic polymer microparticles can't be added to things like cosmetics anymore. But it's only covering the intentional addition of microscale particles, and it won't be fully implemented until 2035. France were ready to bring in a mandate on microscale filtration on washing machines next year. The European Union have slowed down that legislation, and now our best hope is 2027 or maybe 2028. We know there's an ever-increasing problem with microplastics. You saw the graph at the beginning. Right now, they're still flowing. Finally, our third step is all around downstream use. What we're trying to do is find really great ways of using the waste that can be captured, the micro-scale waste that we can capture, so that it doesn't just end up in landfill and incineration. One man's trash, another man's treasure. So we're trying to drive value, we're trying to transform this material into something useful, we're trying to save virgin resources, and we're trying to drive for a properly circular system. So, how can we turn off that tap? Well, we've developed microscale filtration technology that can cope at fluid flow rates below 10 litres per minute, but as high as 700 litres per minute, which is roughly 1 million litres of water a day. That technology can be standalone, or it can be integrated into appliances or big facilities. We have a regeneration process that means that our filter membranes can be cleaned and recovered when they get blocked by the fibres and particles that they're collecting, which means there aren't any consumables. We're not capturing something with something else that then needs to be landfilled or incinerated. It also doesn't lock the waste up, so you can then take that waste in its sort of slightly purer form and use it for something else. We've also developed technology that's complementary to help store the waste and to make it user-friendly, so it's easier to empty. You don't have to empty it so often. It's dry and not very, very wet. All of these things help to make it easier for people to adopt it. We're focusing on 3 key industry areas at the moment: laundry, textiles, wastewater. So in laundry, we have a standalone filter called Gulp, which is compatible with most domestic washing machines, and we're working to bring that into production this year. We've also scaled our system so that it fits inside domestic washing machines, and we've optimized that architecture for a number of washing machine manufacturers. In textiles, we're collaborating with several recognized brands. We're conducting microplastic assessment programs for them to map the generation and filtering of microplastics in facilities within their supply chains. We've also scaled up the technology, so it's suitable to be applied at a machine level or a subsystem level or at a facility level for textiles manufacture, which is obviously where there's quite a lot of scale. Speaking of scale, in wastewater treatment, we're working with various wastewater treatment companies to try to assess the microplastics throughout their wastewater treatment processes to identify opportunities to remove them and to lower emissions to the environment in general, so not just in the water that's going out, but also to try and get them out of sludge. That's less mature for us, but we can see how massive that impact could be because obviously the throughput for wastewater is just so large. So, have a look at the QR code if you feel like it. That'll take you to our website. We're very, very keen to collaborate. We're really open to collaborating in any of these areas, but also in any areas that we're not currently working in where you think there could be value. So please get in touch with us. We really want to deploy this technology at scale, but we can't do that without collaborating. We're a small 40-person startup in Bristol at the moment. We really want to make a difference. So I better come to my prediction because my time is running out. I'm afraid it's a bit bleak, sorry. I predict that the age we're living in is not going to be called the Silicon Age or the Information Age or the Data Age. I think it's going to be the Plastics Age. I think it's pretty inevitable that the archaeologists of the future are going to find copious quantities of plastic because it doesn't break down in the natural environment. It's a legacy that I don't really want to leave for my children, so I guess what I'm really doing is a call to action. I'm asking all of you to play your part and to join me and Matter in trying to make the plastics age as short as possible. Thanks.